In today's session, our VP Sales, Basim El-Shoura, will be covering Master Your Data, keeping track of everything you own in Sesame. We understand the challenge of creating a complete picture of your assets, and so today, when I hand over to Basim, he'll be showing you how Sesame simplifies investment data management with automated data feeds and tools. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Basim to lead you through the session.
Thank you very much, Amy, and hello everyone. Pleasure to be here with you all. So today, as Amy said, we'll be walking you through how to master your data, and ultimately we'll be going through how Sesame helps many of our family offices master their data. And so we're going to start off by giving a quick introduction to Landytech for those of you who haven't spoken to us in a while, or for those of you who have never spoken to us. So Landytech was founded around 6 years ago by these two gentlemen on the top left, Benjamin and Gregory, both of whom come from an institutional investment background. Benjamin had a fund of hedge fund, which he sold to Schroders. Gregory was the head of multi-asset risk at Schroders. And actually, many of us at Landytech, including myself, all come from an institutional investment background. And so through our platform, we're providing that institutional infrastructure that we had when we were working for investment institutions to the family offices that we service. And so it very much goes in line with our tagline at the top there, built by investment professionals for investment professionals. And so today as a business, we have circa 80 clients, so a little more than that 70 number which you see on the slide, and the vast majority of which are family offices, single and multi-family offices, which means that in turn we have around $100 billion worth of assets under reporting. And our key USP is the fact that in Europe, which is our real stomping ground, we have more than 400 custodian feeds already set up, and we can leverage all of that data which we receive from those custodians in many ways, and we'll be talking through that today. So what do we actually do for many of the family offices that we service, and what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Well, again, it comes all the way back to data. The fact of the matter is that many families that we service have invested across the asset class spectrum, whether that's in private markets, whether that's in public markets. They've ultimately got data coming at them from different directions, from different private banks, in different frequencies, in different formats, that is so difficult for them to manage. And so we take care of all of that burden, and we set up feeds with each of their data sources. And ultimately, what we're trying to achieve here is the fact that many families, if I go to the next slide, are spending a huge amount of their time, 55% of their time, in Excel spreadsheets, right? 1 week is lost every month to consolidating data, and 67% of them are admitting to errors in their reports. Again, due to the fact that they are doing so much work manually in Excel. So our goal, our aim, is to considerably reduce costs and reduce any risks through those through that manual effort. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a bit today about how we're servicing families on the data front, and then we'll go straight into the platform and show you how we help them do that in more of a practical sense. So this chart summarizes it very, very well. So the first thing we do is we actually source the data. So we connect directly with each of those 400 banks by either SFTP or API. And it means that on a daily basis, we can collect transactions files, holdings files, but naturally, many of those banks which we connect with will have very different formats. And so it's important for us to standardize everything, which is the next phase that we have here. And so once we standardize the data, we then have to validate it, because often families often find that the banks are actually sending them incorrect data. Transactions are often missing. Corporate actions are not accounted for. Prices are wrong. Exposures are incredibly out of whack. And so we have a team of data analysts here at Landytech actively checking that the data is correct. So we have a huge validation layer. And so they have dashboards in place which they can check to actively see, have exposures jumped, have our prices incorrect. And we can do that because we have a lot of market data providers and vendors who we work with. And so we can clearly see, oh look, prices are clearly wrong, and we can check with the custodian or work with the client to make sure that the custodian does correct that information. We then store all of the data. So we store the data in Microsoft Azure in Dublin and Ireland. So all of our data is GDPR compliant, so it stays within Europe. And then we ultimately then enrich your data. So all of those holdings files, which include the ISINs, the QSIPs, the CDOLs, are then enriched with data that we receive from the likes of MSCI, from Alpha Vantage, from C-Bonds, from Morningstar, etc. So it means that ultimately our clients are able to get so much more information than just a standard transaction report or holdings file. And then finally, once we enrich all of that data, we can push it to our front end, which is what I'm going to show you, which means that we can then slice and dice all of our clients' data across the dimensions of performance, risk, and exposures, and therefore really ask questions like, what is my exposure to a given sector or a given country or a given market cap, whatever it might be, or even my performance from all of those categories. And then finally, it's all about producing reports and dashboards. Whilst we service many family offices, ultimately many UBOs don't necessarily just want to log into an app, but they also want to receive a report or an email directly into their inbox, which they can check every morning. So we make sure we put all of that in place, as well as tools like notifications, if, for example, exposures to a certain country are too high, or if my cash exposure is too low, then we can alert you, whatever it might be. And we also have a collaboration hub as well. Okay, so now that I've mentioned how we source the data, how we validate it, how we enrich it, how we analyze it, and how we report upon it, let's go into Sesame and see what it's all about. So I'm going to go over here into this tab, and I will just show you how it looks. And so here you can see our platform. It's called Sesame, as you can see on the top left. And I'm sure you've heard the phrase open sesame before. So as you can see from the top, we have a huge number of functionalities which are available, but the focus for today is all around mastering our data, mastering your data. And so what I'm going to spend a lot of time on today is actually the back end of Sesame, which all of our clients have access to. So if I go over here into this management tab, you'll be able to see all of the information available. So there you have it, right? So you can see on the back end, we have a huge number of tabs available. So I've just clicked here on managed feeds. And on managed feeds, you can clearly see that for this given family, it's a dummy portfolio, they have a number of banks which they have asked us to connect to. So they've got Pictet, UBS, JP Morgan, Metro Bank, Credit Suisse, etc. Right? And so the great thing about this is it gives you visibility as to what data has been received by Sesame and on which date. Right? So clearly you can see here, we have received data from these banks, hence the green tick, but we're still waiting from these data sources as to on their transactions and holdings files. So it gives you visibility, it gives us visibility, it enables us to go back to the custodian and ask for your data ultimately, right? Now, we have dashboards like this, not only just for your feeds, but also for your calculations, right, and the output. So you might want to see, well, have Landytech calculated my exposures and my performance and my risks? Well, all of that is also available on the platform, okay? Now, the next piece I want to walk you through is around open banking, okay? So many of you might be aware of open banking protocols, which came around a few years ago via the PSD2 directive here in Europe, which ultimately means that tools like Landytech can connect via API to any current account for a bank within Europe. So let's give you an example here. I'm going to choose any legal entity within my family office ownership structure. Let's say it's my holding company. I'm then going to choose any country that I like. So I'm based in the United Kingdom, I'll choose the United Kingdom. And then we can choose the currency. So we've got GBP. I'll hit next, and I will authenticate with open banking. Just give it a second to load. And I can accept the terms, and then you'll be able to see the full list of the banks that we can connect with via open banking. So whether it's Barclays, whether it's Lloyds, whether it's NatWest, ABN, Arbitron, whatever it might be, there's obviously a huge number of banks available. And we can bring in banks from all of the other countries in Europe too, whether you're in France or Germany, whatever it might be, right? And so if I wanted to click onto Monzo, for example, it would be, I can log in just as if I'm logging in directly from my iPhone, right? And then I can set it up so that all of my cash transactions are automatically swept directly into Sesame, right? And then we can combine that with any investment data we've received via SFTP. Okay, so again, being able to combine all of your data, not just one type of asset class. Okay, let's move on to our portfolio management system. Now, our portfolio management system was created for all of those non-custodied assets, all of those collectibles, art, cars, designer wear, whatever it might be, right? And I want to just give you a glimpse here as to the types of collectibles which are available. So I mentioned art, I mentioned cars, we have fine wine, we have furniture, we have horses, we have hedge funds. So anything that is not custodied with a bank can be captured in the portfolio management system, as you can see here, right? And so you're probably wondering, well, how do we use this in practice? Well, let's do it together. And so I'm going to click on Add New, and we're going to create a PE fund investment, right? So I've just put in European PE Fund X, and the country, I'll click on United Kingdom. The name, we can say KKR Fund X, and the country of risk is the UK, currency GBP, and the type, I will type in private equity. Notice that you can have private equity, direct, co-investment, fund. In this case, we're talking about a fund. So I'll hit next. And if I wanted to, I can enter in the strategy, the management fee, performance fee, the industry, the sector, etc. For all intents and purposes, I'm not going to do that today. But I've now created my asset. But what do you do once you create your asset? Well, you then want to transact upon it, right? And so that's where our PMS is really, really useful. And so I've now clicked on transactions, and I'll now then be able to enter in any transaction that I like. So if I enter in a transaction, I might want to associate my transaction with a given part of my family office ownership structure. So whether it's a legal entity or a portfolio, I can now enter in any transaction that I like. So whether it is a commitment, whether it is a capital call, and then I can enter in all of the associated information with that too, right? Is it deductible? Is it non-deductible? What are the management fees, fund expenses, etc. Okay. Now, often people might say, well, I've got a lot of historical data. I've got a lot of historical capital calls and a lot of distributions, which I've already captured in Excel. How can I input those into the system? Well, in that regard, I can go to my bulk import page, and I can enter in all of my transactions, which are already in Excel. So if it's a capital call, I can take my capital calls in my Excel and drag and drop them directly in here, and that will feed directly into the system. Okay. Now, the last thing I just want to mention here on the PMS is a lot of our clients hold real estate or art or any other asset which might need to be valued on maybe an annual cadence rather than a daily cadence, right? In which case, if you wanted to, you could very well update the valuation very easily directly in Sesame 2. Okay, so that is the portfolio management system. Now, the great thing here is we've talked about entering all of our data via a custodian, via the SFTP. We've talked about entering our data directly into the portfolio management system for any assets which are not custodied with a bank via the portfolio management system. But ultimately, you then want to see it all together, right? And so that is where our ownership structure comes in very, very handy. So this is an example of a family office ownership structure. So we've got a holding company at the top. We've got an operating company here. We've got a financial company here. And within our financial company, we've got these three portfolios. We've got a portfolio with Pictet, we've got a portfolio with Credit Suisse, and a portfolio with UBS. And if we wanted to, we could see all of the underlying for each of those. So within Pictet, we've got our investments with BAT and Burberry, etc. With Credit Suisse, I've got all of my money market and cash accounts. And with UBS, I've got all of my hedge funds, for example. And within my OpCo, I've got a hotel, I've got my Porsche, etc. So this is the real power of Sesame, being able to bring all of your data into one view. And ultimately, off the back of this, we'll be able to slice and dice it in any way that you want. And not only do that, but also view any documents that you like, view performance as you like, view exposures as you'd like, and really drill in deep into the data. So I'm going to stop there because I appreciate there's a lot of information in this very first Workshop Wednesdays. So Amy, I'll pass it over to you. If anyone has any questions, I'd be delighted to take them.
Thanks so much, Basim. That was a really great overview and demo of Sesame. So we do have a couple of questions that came in. Let me just pull those up quickly. So you did touch on capital calls, but the question is there any way to automate the input of capital calls and distributions?
Great question. So there's two ways in which you can do it, right? Well, the first is, like I mentioned, you can enter it directly from an Excel and it will upload directly into the system. But actually, the most groundbreaking way, which is what we're actually developing right now, is on the roadmap to be released very, very soon, is our AI parsing tool, whereby it's going to be no longer the case whereby you have to manually enter in a transaction, whether it's a capital call or a distribution, but simply drop the capital call document into Sesame via our document manager, and automatically any data will be scraped directly from there, and the capital call will be fed directly into the system. Yeah, watch this space in that regard. It's going to be a very cool tool.
Wonderful. And then we did have one more question, and that was, how is my data securely managed in the platform?
Very, very important question. And naturally, many of our clients are family offices, as I mentioned. And so data security, cybersecurity is paramount to everything that we do. At the end of last year, we actually received our ISO 27001 certification, which ultimately means that we are best in class when it comes to cybersecurity. It's also worth mentioning that all of our clients' data is encrypted in transit and upon rest. And when we're using ISO certified tools like Microsoft Azure, who are big partners of ours, obviously, it adds that added layer of comfort as well. And it's also worth mentioning that with that ISO certification that we have, we are one of the very few investment management providers out there which actually have it. So yes, you're in trusted hands.
Great, thanks, Basim. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Hope to see you next week. Bye.